This is Elizabeth Rossiello, and this is Tech Intersect.
Welcome to Tech Intersect, where we explore the nexus of technology, law, and innovation with trailblazers shaping the future of Web3. And today I'm really excited. We're joined by Elizabeth Rossiello, a visionary leader in fintech and also the CEO and founder of AZA Finance, a groundbreaking global payments and foreign exchange fintech company. Started in Nairobi in 2013, AZA Finance has been at the forefront of financial technology and pioneering the way that we work, we build, and we think about a global decentralized future that is empowering and inclusive. And I'm always excited to talk about a powerhouse, a boss, BAWCE, because that is exactly who Elizabeth is. We will talk about her journey, the impact of AZA Finance, and her views on the future of fintech. Elizabeth, we will talk about all that and more in a moment, but first, welcome to Tech Intersect.
Thank you so much for having me and such kind words.
Absolutely. This is one of my uh, it's going to be my favorite topic for a while because there's so much going on the continent of Africa. And I think it's so, we often, from the United States point of view, I'm an educator, I'm a policy consultant in the fintech space, and I often find that the conversations are so myopic. Myopic, focusing on the United States in particular, when I really want us to take a more global approach to it. So I'm so fascinated by and interested in your work and sharing that with our listeners and viewers. So if you could talk first about what inspired you to launch AZA Finance in Nairobi, what it is, and what the fintech landscape is in Africa that drew you to this space.
Great, thank you. So, sorry for those who've heard the story before, but in 2013, I had spent 5 years living in Nairobi working in microfinance. I had left banking like many, disillusioned, and I got a job with a company that was co-founded by Mohammed Yunus, father of microfinance, Planet Finance, and moved down to work in microfinance for 5 years in Nairobi. And I worked with everybody, Grameen, Gates Foundation, Finca, Axion, and I was writing rating reports. And many people call microfinance FinTech version 1. A lot of the microfinance institutions around the world were the first adapters to mobile money and, agency banking and a lot of the innovation that led the way to where we are today. And after 5 years on the ground, I became disillusioned with microfinance. And, I think what I found was a lot of people trying to replicate European and American banking methodology in sub-Saharan Africa, and it wasn't working.
Mm.
Not for the population density, not for the level of technical support that you found for the software companies they were implementing, a lot of nerdy reasons. So, I was looking to start my own company to solve one of the biggest problems that I had found, which was no local currency debt financing. That means microfinance institutions were lending in hard currencies, still are today, by the way, and then on lending in local currencies. And I was like, this is indebting rather than, empowering or liberating these populations. It's kind of a big hypocrisy in the industry. And so I said, why don't we just trade in local currencies? So I was looking to start a local currency trading startup back in 2013. Silicon Savannah was just happening. And I met an investor who said, I'll do it if you use Bitcoin. And so I was like, okay. So we started BitPesa, which in 2013 was the first cryptocurrency exchange on the African continent. It was also the first cryptocurrency exchange run by a female ever, and for a long time was the only one. My co-founder Charlene Chen joined me a bit later, and Amy Ludland came in as CFO. And we really were the first of many. Some people say even too early. We got into a big lawsuit with the Kenyan government over what is Bitcoin and should it be traded and is it a localized currency or community currency. And we started to talk about a lot of the big issues that are still present today. Um, Bloomberg did a big piece on us being the Western Union killer, and today you still find pieces on whether cryptocurrency will solve the remittance problem for sub-Saharan Africa and other markets. And what we found over 10 years, and a few years ago we rebranded to AZA Finance, was that it's difficult to be an end-to-end remittance solution using cryptocurrency unless the on-ramps and off-ramps and regulation are there on both sides. And for many years,
Mm,
we had instant on-ramping and off-ramping of cryptocurrencies in Africa due to the use of mobile money and other digital technologies that were available. But the senders who were in Canada, North America, Europe, didn't have instant access. So it didn't make a lot of sense. So we would receive
right.
fiat currencies from global remittance companies. And, sometimes on the other sell side, we would pay out or receive cryptocurrencies. And that's when we really became what we call a hybrid FX platform. We
Mm,
buy, sell, and settle both fiat and cryptocurrencies. Over the years, the popularity of different currencies have made us sell more Bitcoin or Ethereum. Now it's mainly stable coins. And what we really try to do
mm,
is solve the problem we sought out to do 10 years ago, and it's been 10 years, which is increase the use of African currencies and currencies available to Africans. Because you can't issue debt in a currency that the lender can't access, or so
right,
I think even today, we don't see the World Bank or the IMF always issuing local currency loans, which is bonkers. So I think
right.
today
Do
we're
you
doing
find that they're in? Oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish your point.
now we process about 2 billion transactions a year last year. We'll do about 4 billion this year. We work with 36 of the largest remittance companies, and we buy African currencies from corporates, other fintechs, and now I'm proud to say a lot of smaller crypto exchanges. And we're the source
Mm,
of liquidity. So we match big inflows with big outflows, and we make a market in over 15 African currencies directly and over 25 with partners. And we match them and create pairs against other African currencies, G8, and all around the world.
the liquidity that you have injected into a place and space, I think, is just the best example of how powerful it is from a back end point of view to seamlessly, with less time, less cost, less friction, to be able to go in and out of currencies that are divided by borders, but you have this way that people can transact across community, across borders, and in a way that is different than we think about traditionally in the United States. I constantly I receive pushback here in the States, for example, about Bitcoin and other crypto being just for speculation. I think it's actually a privileged view to think about in that perspective without fully appreciating the impact with respect to remittances and
100%.
actually daily trade. Talk to us about that, because it's a tale really of two cities, a tale of two worlds. Talk about the impact from a remittance point of view.
Well, I don't want to be controversial, but I'll say two things. So, I used to be the chair of the Blockchain Council at the World Economic Forum, and I spent a
Mm,
couple years working with them and talking to central bankers and corporates and big banking all over the world. Citibank was on there,
mm,
Standard Charter, Swift, everybody was on there, and they were like, what is the use? The only use is for devaluing or crashing, plummeting currencies." And I said, "Actually, I'm going to give you a different use. 24/7 settlement." Why should
mm-hmm.
the
Just
African
that.
con Yeah, like when it's Martin Luther King Day or Memorial Day or, whatever day it is when the US is on a holiday and the rest of the world isn't, we're dying over there. It's a
Mm,
3-day weekend. It's killing us. And when it's Ramadan and we actually need a lot of volume over a holiday weekend, or,
right,
when there's a local holiday like an Independence Day or a national holiday, and it happens to fall on a day when there's not in service, or when you're in the Middle East and they transact on Saturdays, and,
right,
dollar banking doesn't clear, you're at a lock. And that immediately creates, and this is a little nerdy, but that immediately creates a heavier liquidity crunch in these markets. And that means that
right,
startups and market participants have to take longer periods of credit risk. And given the fact that we have less liquidity to start with and higher periods of credit risk and more volatile currencies, all of a sudden it
Right.
starts to become almost impossible. So when I have a counterparty that's able to settle with me in stable coins, I'm like, chef's kiss, because I know that I'm going to get it
Right.
within an hour. It doesn't matter when it is. I don't have to worry about on Tuesday, will the dollar clearing be rejected or not rejected or come through? And so, I've been on stage a bunch of places where people have said, oh, you're a criminal if you have to transact on the weekend, or what's wrong with your company, that you can't transact exactly on the US dollar calendar. And I said, we have a 24/7 global economy, and to not have a 24/7
Mm,
global settlement system, just that alone is what digital currencies are great for, and something people don't talk about a lot. I think, there's a million other things, such as the fact that when I integrate with a startup that's using stablecoin, the integration is so
mm,
much easier. They're engineering led, they're usually an agile company, they have everything open source, everything's, public depository, they're easy to check. When you're integrating with MasterCard or Visa or another big corporate, it's a year, 2 years. They're
right.
just not the same mindset, not the same innovation and product led. And I think it just shows that that's where the world is heading, to have more integration partners, and so much easier to settle and reconcile. So those are two kind of back office reasons. But if you're a market maker or if
Mhm.
you're an exchange or a liquidity provider, they are essential.
Really important because this really is the future, and what you've described is that the future is now. It's not just hyperbole or something that we say. That you're literally proving on the ground why it matters and why we increasingly. It's interesting as I think about the first book in this area that I wrote is Digital Money Demystified, and really undercutting or um, tackling head on some of the most pervasive myths as a matter of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And the entry point from an education perspective, not just for investors, but for everyone to really understand the underlying technology, the first use case of that technology, obviously the disruptive impact, but really pushing aside this idea always and only for criminals, just a fad, just a scam. What you're what you're talking about is transformative in a very short window of time. I'm wondering if you had to push past any of the myths when you were introduced to not just financial technology as we know it now, but cryptographically secured assets, particularly as a woman. We're both in those spaces where although they're increasing numbers of us, you're an OG. So talk to us about what that environment was as you started to think and pivot. Someone said, we'll do this deal with you, but only in Bitcoin. And you're like, cool, cool. Was there any hesitation on your part? Did you have to demystify the space for yourself with your own origin story?
Well, this is such a deep topic, and we could talk forever about it. I think number one, I was out of luck at that time. I had just had two kids in a row, and I was traveling
Mm,
heavy in the field for the microfinance work, and I was finding it harder and harder to get hired, and they were hiring more
mm,
male people, that they were coming to lunch with me to get my ideas for free. I won't name names, but
mm.
it was quite a few
Been
funds.
there, done that.
Let me pick your brain. Hey, can you send me your whole spreadsheet? Hey, how about you do this for
Right.
free? But I can't hire you. I'm going to hire this lesser qualified guy. So I was like getting out of options, and I went up for the same job as my ex-husband, and he got it. And they asked me about my kids,
Mm,
and I said, he has kids too. In fact, the same kids.
right.
Literally.
Literally.
So so when I had this offer to like start something, and the guy said, involve Bitcoin, and I'll give you $50,000 to start it, and not all at once, he dripped it out.
Yeah.
I was like, why not? And I think a lot of people who first entered this were excluded from other places. And I had been
Mm-hmm.
at the Heights. I worked at Goldman Sachs Fig Group when I was 22, and then I had been,
Mm,
pregnant and barefoot in Kenya with, no options for a job, even though I was highly educated. And I was
right.
like, okay, why not? I have nothing less left to lose. And, the system isn't treating me well. So I did come at it from a bit of an alternative perspective. And then
Mm,
when I started to meet people, Charles Hoskinson gave me a Skype call. Peter from Blockchain gave me a call.
mm,
Harry Silberg gave me a call. Pantera guys hooked me up. All of a sudden, I got this like
mm,
love from this community that was like, "You can do this. We need somebody who knows the field work, we'll support you. And I was like, literally
Mm-hmm.
never in finance did I get this kind of community. So for me, I was
Right.
all in on it from that perspective. And it was the first time for me working with an engineering team and a product team, and that was awesome. And I found my calling. And then when I spoke to a lot of the regulators and they asked me all these questions about, the technology and the licensing, I said, I was in your office 6 months ago about the licensing related to banking and non-banking financial
Mm.
institutions. And I was leading a training on that, and you weren't asking these questions. So, like, this is
Right.
hypocritical. I literally have been giving central bank trainings in South Africa and Ghana, Nigeria, and South Sudan. So I was like, guys,
Mm.
I'm the same person I was here 6 months ago, and why are these rules suddenly important here and not in the place where you have a joint venture with a private corporation? So I started to see a lot of the hypocrisy, and I was bought in. And I think,
Mm.
over the years, it's incredibly tough to be human. One,
Mm.
female, two, a person of color, a person of different socioeconomic, and at times I've been through all of them, working
Right.
as a redhead in Nigeria. And I think I
Okay.
just, I think I just, you know, realize that everybody's suffering in some way and just try to find that bridge
Mm-hmm.
and get there. I talk about it a lot now. I recognize all the privilege I've had and try to always
Mm.
share it and try to bring other people to understand it. And I think I like this community because they are, I won't say philanthropic in general. I will
Mm.
say interested in improvement. And I found a lot of people in this space are looking. And, in Africa, you meet a lot of development institutions and social enterprises. And I've rated a lot of them. And I'm not sure they're all so value driven when you look at it
Mm.
closely. And here I found the opposite, people masquerading as capitalists or libertarians. And when you look closer, they're actually quite empathetic and, value driven. So I guess that's attracted me to this space too.
I love that you mentioned that because that is definitely a through line for me as well. You came into the space as a woman of color, as a Black woman. I'm not a technologist and I do not come from the finance space, but my entry point was really at the intersection of intellectual property and blockchain at the time, and then developing courses for my law students so that they would be better lawyers, more conversant in the space and able to represent people who are builders in the space. And then I fell down the rabbit hole and recovered some 7 years later and don't know what happened, but my life is amazing. But I have experience, and I heard you mention Barry Silbert. Shout out to DCG. I am on the board of DCG as of the fall, and it's been a fantastic ride. And I think you make an excellent point. For those not Barry, but just the larger segment, masquerading as one thing, but actually quite welcoming if you show interest and enthusiasm and respect for the space, then I have found many doors that opened, and
100%.
the way
And
that we learn.
I'm not gonna out Barry for being a soft-hearted, gentle sort of. I know
No, the good
that's not
thing.
part of
Right.
his that's not part of his public persona, but so much kindness has been shown to me
Yeah.
over the years. And when I had to go back to the venture capitalist, I was like, bruh, bring me back to the blockchain
Yeah.
one. Yeah, I was like, oh, a quick break from hard cold finance again, where people are jerks. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
I will say
Talk to me
it's.
about.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just saying sometimes it's a little tough when a lot of people new to the space will say, and
Mm.
this is why Africa needs it, and this is why it's good for Africa.
Mm.
And my token will then help Africa. And I've had a lot of calls over the years where I'm like, would you say that about a demographic or a client base that you've never met in Canada or like Wisconsin? Would you
Mm.
launch a retail product that you know nothing about? You can't, that's been really rough. And I think my shareholders have been really awesome in coming with us in this journey to learn about the markets that we enter. And when we were
Mm.
left Kenya for Nigeria and moved from Nigeria to Senegal and then Cameroon and Morocco and South Africa, they really come with us in that journey and learned a lot and asked questions. And the second generation of investors, talks
Mm.
in a lot more nuanced way about it. And I've loved to see, the learning curve. And we just had eBanks, which is, um, a great unicorn from South America that's crypto adjacent, in the space paving space,
Nice.
wrote this beautiful nuanced report about it. So I think it's like really great to see that that learning curve is moving much faster than the traditional venture space still.
Mm-hmm.
I think that comes part down to, that initial empathy of like, who are we trying to serve and how do we get there?
When you, well, let me ask it this way, because you mentioned earlier about obviously Bitcoin, ETH, the other coins and tokens in the mix, but also about stable coins. And I'm very interested. I don't know here in the States, because of this election year, doesn't seem hopeful that we'll have any significant legislation, but I know that there's some calls for regulation and clarification around stables and the market in general. And I'm wondering the impact and the importance of stablecoins as one of the options that you leverage
Yeah.
it as a finance as
No,
well.
it's huge. And I gotta say, I'm a recovering Bitcoin maxi. So like I was like,
I hear you.
stable coins, no, like. And then I've known Jeremy Allaire forever. We used to trade with those guys
Mm-hmm.
back before they did stablecoins, and like he was super helpful with our Nigerian market opening. He used to like
Mm,
onboard my Nigerian corporates for me to pay out in US dollar.
nice.
And I think my first trade with him was paying a Harvard University tuition bill for one of my Nigerian clients. Um, yeah, he like sent the money to the Harvard. So we've been through it, and when you're logistically using digital currency, when you're actually
Mm,
operating at volume, you're like, where can we save time and money? What would make more sense for clients? And I think the slippage was a bit of an issue, but not so much of an issue. People were using crypto
mm-hmm.
in my specific use case to trade in and out. So it didn't really
Right.
matter if it moved because honestly, the Naira or the CD will fall faster in 5 minutes than crypto would most days.
Absolutely.
So, that wasn't the big idea. But the problem was when they cash out, will the banks allow it? And it just seemed like the banks didn't take to crypto the way they took to stable coins. I don't know if
Mm.
they were, drinking different water or they just got wore out or they really believe two private stable coins are more stable. I don't know, whatever it is. They decided that that was safer. And for whatever reason, I won't weigh in on that. And then they allowed more market makers to open accounts. Now, all of a
Mm,
sudden, you have more on and off ramps for stablecoins. That to me, I won't go into why it happened, whether it was better or worse or good or bad or a different time, but it happened. So now all of a sudden,
mm,
if I sell a customer stablecoin in Central Africa or West Africa, they have a real chance of that being paid out to somebody around the world and being then transferred to local currency in T0, T1.
mm,
Before it would be, it arrives somewhere and then they're really struggling to get it out off ramp it. So that
right.
changed the game, I would say 24 months ago. And we wrote a paper with Circle, a white paper
Mm,
recently about this. And we saw things go 100% to stablecoins. So all of our crypto volume went to
right.
stablecoins. And we're seeing markets that were not crypto heavy, like Senegal, for example, Cote d'Ivoire, were very slow. I had an office in
Mm,
Senegal. I moved there with my kids 2015, 16. Nobody wanted to
mm,
talk about it. Akon said he was coming, he never came. And so
right.
then, but when stablecoins have come, it's a different story. So again, it goes back to that nerdy usage, which is where can you off ramp it?
I have so many questions and topics to cover. I'm definitely going to have you back. I have to get you back to your busy life. So I'm going to end on this because we have a lot of uh, women entrepreneurs really around the globe who listen or watch the show, and they're focused on financial inclusion, but they're focused on many aspects of how they can use their current expertise to really prepare and pivot and be, sorry for the alliteration, and to be purposeful in the Web3 environment. And you are such a stalwart and a trailblazer who you have your head down and you're doing the work, right? You don't have pom poms on. Nobody has time for that. But I do want you to take the pom poms for a second and encourage some women to make that choice, particularly women in their 40s who are starting to put your head up and say, I've done all this. I've given and developed all this value within, now it's time for me to take my expertise and go to the next level. What would be some steps that people, women in particular, could take in the fintech space to find their footing?
I thank you for that question, and I appreciate your kind words again. I don't know if I earned them all, but I was 31 when I started this company, I think. I had two kids, a 1 and a 2-year-old.
Mm.
If a venture capitalist saw me come into their parking lot, they'd be like, back up, like I was not what anybody wanted to see. And I was based in Nairobi and never came to San Francisco. So, I mean, like
Right.
nobody wanted to even look me in the face. What is that? I won't
Mhm.
repeat on this cast, the Julia Louis-Dreyfus comedy, like your last day as a female,
Yeah.
like nobody wanted me anywhere near them. But I had a wave of energy, and I was like, who cares
Mm.
what anybody else wants? This is what I'm going to do. And I had never worked with a product team, never worked with an engineering team, and I just found the right people, and I dug in deep like many women know how to do. So I would say
Right.
don't get like pushed to, fundraising or just at the edge of it, where like, the marketing stuff, the typical woman, not that there's anything wrong with those things,
That's
but that's
right.
where typically you always see the females in these organizations. Go into the operations, go into the market entry, go into the analysis. All the skills you had in your past life are exactly applicable. Just like finance, blockchain is a bunch of vocabulary words. So like just
Right.
get through it. Nobody's a rocket scientist. You can learn it too. Don't be put off by the vocabulary words. Just get in there and put your head down. And I think, there's a lot of teams and a lot of blockchain projects that start off well and don't end well because they're lacking back office operations, market entry
Right.
operations, risk protocols, basic business principles. And that's something that's needed. And we need people with,
Mhm.
20 years experience in there. And just as you need, fresh blood who haven't been battered down by humanity to think of new ideas.
Right.
And so, you know,
Alex.
there,
Nice.
there's a place for you, and just, get at it. And I think I see a lot of women who are, on the periphery talking about it, but get in there and, don't let them. We worked with FTX for a while, and one guy there kept mentioning
Mm.
my age all the time, every conversation. He'd be like, a woman as old as you. And I like didn't and I didn't say what I wanted to do to him. Yeah. Every meal, every time, every mention, every conversation. And it just reminded me how, you know, business skills, maturity, communication, coaching, mentoring are important in team building, especially when you're building international teams that are remote. All those skills are really
Mm.
important and are lacking in a lot of young teams. So there's so many things out there in these companies that need your skill set. So don't be afraid, get in there, go for it.
Get in there. You don't have to do all the things at once, but take the next right step. There's a lot more support in 2024 than there was for me in 2017 and for Elizabeth in 2013. And we turned out all right. Ruth, I'm so thankful that you came on. It's the first but not the last. Last thing, let people know how they can learn more about you and AZA Finance.
Yeah, well, just hop on azafinance.com, and we got a lot of stuff up on social too. You can find us as a finance, and most of all, come out and see us. We do a lot of events. We go to a lot of the remittance ages, the remittance industry and the payments industry. So give us a shout and hit us up if you have a project that you're interested in working on, or if you're looking to enter the African continent and want to learn about how to get on or off ramped.
Thank you so much. I'll share your links in the show notes, and I look forward to our next conversation. Maybe you'll be on the continent. Maybe I'll have my people call
Sure,
your
come on
people.
down. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. That's